During a private geopolitics lesson in London, a young British heir interrupted the professor's mid-explanation about the continents and asked, with all seriousness in the world, "Is the southern hemisphere also accessible by private jet?" The professor thought it was ironic, but the young man continued, "Because I don't see any direct flights there on my app. Maybe it's an area exclusively for scientific missions." When the professor explained that half the planet was there, including places like Brazil and Australia, he replied, "Oh yes, I've heard of those tropical resorts, but imagine living somewhere where the sun rises upside down. That must be strange." A lifestyle influencer traveled to Dubai for a fashion shoot in the desert. On the second day, she started complaining, "It's all beautiful, but this sun is too much. Can't the government plant some trees here? There's no natural shade." When they explained that the desert is desert, she said, "Oh, I see. So it's like a minimalist concept of nature." She recorded a story looking at the dunes and wrote, "Beautiful, but I still think the desert needs some landscaping." An American businessman decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with a group of executives, saying he wanted a real challenge. After a few hours of climbing, he began complaining about the cold and wind. He told the guide, "This is absurd. I paid for a premium experience, not for climatic discomfort." He asked if there was any way to install portable air conditioning at the top, just to stabilize the temperature. The guide, confused, replied that there was only wind and ice up there. The man sighed and said, "That's why nature needs private management." A Mexican socialite was traveling through Eastern Europe and, at a cafe in Hungary, asked the waiter, "Do you have Starbucks around here?" He replied that there wasn't one nearby. Her eyes widened. "So what do people drink in the morning?" The waiter, a mustachioed gentleman, replied, "Coffee." She wrote on her phone, "Interesting local culture. They survive without franchises." In the caption of the post she made later, she wrote, "Exploring the European countryside, where artisanal coffee called coffee still exists." An art collector from Monaco purchased an original 15th century fresco depicting an angel playing a harp. Proud of his acquisition, he decided to modernize the piece. He called a private restorer and asked him to adjust the angel's face to make it more contemporary. The restorer asked what he meant by this. The man replied, "Perhaps a more pronounced jawline, defined eyebrows, a touch of artistic Botox." When the restorer refused, he called another, specialized in digital retouching, and had an updated version printed. Today, the original painting is locked away, and on the wall of the mansion hangs an angel with the appearance of an influencer. During a private tour of the Roman Forum, an American billionaire surveyed the ancient columns with a worried expression. He asked the guide, "Are these ruins still under warranty? Some look cracked." The guide explained that they were over 2,000 years old. The billionaire shook his head and said, "That's no excuse. If a modern contractor had built them, they would have recalled them by now." Before leaving, he commented, "Rome is beautiful, but the maintenance is terrible." A young heiress was on a luxury tour of Italy and had included the Colosseum on her list of must-see cultural experiences. After a 15-minute visit, she crossed her arms and complained, "It's impressive, but it needs more VIP seating. How did the important people watch the games?" The guide explained that there were sections reserved for the Roman elite. She replied, "Oh, so there was already a guest list. I love traditions that endure." She asked if Wi-Fi was free for premium guests. In Salvador, a Brazilian businessman purchased an 18th century colonial mansion and decided to restore it with innovation. The architect presented a careful historical preservation plan, but the client rejected it. He said he wanted something more modern, without that air of old poverty. He requested a glass facade, LED lighting, and a neon sign with living heritage. The architect tried to argue the property's cultural value. The businessman replied, "History needs updating. No one respects old things." Today, the mansion is a luxury restaurant with a conceptual menu and a historically inaccessible price tag. An American tycoon invested millions in a laboratory dedicated to longevity research. In one of the meetings with the scientists, he asked in all seriousness, "Have you managed to identify the gene for eternal youth yet?" The project director explained that they were still in the early stages, conducting tests on mice. The billionaire wrinkled his nose. "Mice? That's uninspiring. Can't we test it on something more beautiful? Maybe puppies or hired models?" When the researcher tried to explain that scientific ethics doesn't work that way, he replied, "So that's why science advances slowly. It lacks aesthetic vision." A Los Angeles-based wellness influencer launched a brand of quartz-energized water. Each bottle cost $200 and came with a crystal inside, purified under a full moon, and a mantra playlist. In interviews, she called the product intuitive science, explaining that water molecules respond to self-confidence. A reporter asked if there were any studies proving this. She smiled and said, "Yes, I feel richer every time I drink it." A young petrochemical company heir decided to change the world by creating an environmental NGO. On paper, the foundation planted trees. In practice, it sold handbags and wallets made from luxury recycled leather. He gave an interview stating that sustainability didn't have to be ugly. He said that, for him, saving the planet was a matter of style. At the first charity event, guests arrived in private jets. The theme of the evening, breathing is chic. During an environmental conference in New York, a businessman casually commented, "This pollution thing is overblown. I live in a penthouse downtown, and the air is always pure, with a faint vanilla scent." A scientist nearby tried to explain that this was likely the scent of the air freshener. The man replied, "So we've solved the problem, haven't we? Each building could have its own. We just need to invest." He concluded with the confidence of someone who believes that solving global crises is simply a matter of changing the air conditioning filter. During a dinner in Davos, a real estate mogul presented his grand idea for the future of humanity, creating a country exclusively for millionaires. He called it a premium democracy. He said it would be a nation without poverty, queues, or public opinion. Every citizen would have the right to vote proportional to their wealth, he explained proudly. One of the attendees asked who would take care of basic services. The mogul replied without hesitation, "We can import workers, but without citizenship, of course. They would be like purveyors of humanity." The project was met with polite applause and then an awkward silence. An American influencer wrote a post that went viral on Twitter. "Taxes are a form of economic bullying." She explained that it was unfair for the government to take money from those who worked hard for it, in this case, inheriting it from a family trust. She said that if they wanted to raise money, politicians should sell digital products like any honest entrepreneur. The post received criticism, but she responded with another enlightening phrase. "If everyone were rich, no one would be poor. Think about that." She concluded with the hashtag #YearConsciousEconomy. A French heir, famous for collecting castles, decided to register his own surname as a protected national trademark. He claimed that his family contributed more to the history of France than many kings. The patent office denied the request, explaining that a family name could not be appropriated. He appealed, stating that the nation must honor those who still pay for it. When questioned by the press, he responded, "It's not ego, it's shareholder patriotism." In rural Portugal, a Brazilian businessman bought a mansion in a small town and decided the street name, Travessa dos Cedros, was too modest for his standards. He invited the mayor to dinner and offered a generous donation in exchange for a simple change. He wanted it to be called Avenida da Prosperidade. The mayor refused, saying the name didn't make sense for an 80-meter street. The businessman responded, offended, "Then I get the feeling you don't value success." 2 months later, he had a private gold plaque installed at the entrance to his house. Since then, the GPS announces, "You have arrived at Avenida da Prosperidade Private." An American billionaire bought a private island in the Maldives and a few weeks later began sending complaints to the maintenance staff. He said the sea was invading the beach without authorization. The confused manager asked what he meant. The billionaire responded angrily, "Last night, the sea reached the sun loungers. This is a clear violation of the property boundaries. I paid for the sand, not the water." When they explained it was the tide, he suggested building an invisible wall to keep the ocean in place. A French heiress rented an entire Caribbean resort for her summer vacation. Before the official photos, she called the manager and asked for a cosmetic makeover of the garden. "The leaves on these palm trees are very dull. I want a brighter green." The manager replied that it was the natural color of tropical leaves. She retorted, "Then paint them. Chanel 605 green, a shade of luxury." Two gardeners spent the early morning spraying the palm trees with vegetable dye. The next day, she posted the photo with the caption, "Nothing more authentic than nature in its perfect form." A Canadian business couple hired an engineering firm to build an artificial waterfall in their mansion's backyard, but they wanted a smart version. They requested that the sound of the water be controlled by an app. "We want to be able to reduce the noise when we're on Zoom calls," the husband explained. The engineer tried to argue that the sound of the water was part of the natural experience. The wife replied, "Yes, but nature needs to adapt to modern routines." Today, the waterfall has 3 modes: serenity, executive, and premium silence. During a luxury hike in Hawaii, a Silicon Valley tycoon stopped hiking and complained about the smell of the forest. He said the air was too organic. He asked the guide to remove the odor, or at the very least, spray something more neutral. The guide explained that the smell came from the plants and damp soil. The man replied, "Then change the air filter. That's unpleasant." He spent the rest of the hike covering his nose with a handkerchief soaked in French perfume. A luxury influencer was invited to give a talk on female financial literacy. In a packed auditorium, she began with conviction. "Anyone can get rich. Just don't buy cheap things." The audience fell silent. She continued, "When you buy cheap, you attract the energy of poverty. I, for example, have never set foot in a supermarket. The secret is to buy less, but with value." Someone in the audience asked her what she did when she needed to save. She smiled and replied, "I ask my assistant." The talk ended with timid applause and a discount coupon for an $8,000 handbag store. On a podcast about investing, a young heir began his talk with what he called the secret to financial success. He said, "The first thing is to inherit a good amount. The rest is mindset." The host thought he was joking, but he explained, "Inheriting gives you the freedom to think calmly about investments. If you haven't inherited anything, work until someone in your family inherits. It's about long-term vision." Finally, he added that his trajectory proves that effort is everything. A European bank heir loves to give moral lessons on social media. In a recent post, he wrote, "The problem with poverty is focus. While some people think about bills, I think about assets." In the comments, a follower asked if he'd ever had to pay bills. He replied, "No, but I imagine it's a matter of organization. The universe rewards those who vibrate at a high frequency." The quote went viral and became the graphic on a t-shirt sold by his own brand. During an interview with a business magazine, a fashion entrepreneur was asked about the secret to keeping employees motivated. She replied without hesitation, "A happy employee is one who understands the privilege of serving." The reporter, surprised, asked if she offered benefits. She explained, "Yes, we provide an inspiring environment. Working alongside successful people is already a form of growth." When criticized on social media, she responded matter-of-factly, "People misinterpret it. I only believe in emotional hierarchy." An American influencer proudly announced she was going to Africa to reconnect with simplicity. She told her followers she wanted to see the real world, unfiltered. On her first day, she posted a video of a sunset in the Kalahari Desert and wrote, "Beautiful, but it lacked a warmer golden tone. The natural light is a bit cold for stories." In the comments, someone explained that it was a real African sunset. She replied, "Oh, I see. So the nature here needs some editing." A Russian businessman booked a suite at a luxury hotel in Iceland and requested before his trip an authentic yet comfortable experience. On the second day, he called reception furiously. "The pool is 28 degrees. I asked for 30, with real ice all around." The manager explained that ice and heat were incompatible. The man responded indignantly, "You sell the contrast of nature, so deliver the full product." Hours later, staff were trying to balance artificial ice cubes in a boiling pool, while the guest sipped champagne and declared he was living the extreme with class. A business couple booked a controlled adventure package in Costa Rica. Trails, waterfalls, and jungle, all in comfort and safety. Halfway through the tour, a butterfly landed on their open-air electric car. The woman screamed, "This is unacceptable. We paid for an observed, not participatory, nature experience." The guide tried to explain that the butterflies had no contract with the agency. The husband interrupted, "Then review the itinerary. We want nature with well-defined boundaries." A young heiress canceled a trip to Japan after seeing videos of Tokyo's streets. She called her travel agent and said, "Everything seems so small, you know. The streets, the shops. I don't think my Bentley would fit." The agent tried to convince her, saying that public transportation there was efficient. She replied, "Buses are communal experiences, and spirituality doesn't mix with crowds." She ended up going to Dubai, where the avenues understand the concept of personal space. To them, the world is a brand that has lost control of quality. Everything should come with VIP service, a refund policy, and a golden serial number. When the planet doesn't behave like an on-demand service, they feel offended, as if nature, history, and ordinary people are failing to deliver the promised experience. Idiot rich people don't live on Earth. They live in a parallel, air-conditioned reality with a butler and a view of nowhere. There, the wind only blows with the hairdresser's permission, sunsets have a set time, and even the sea has to ask permission to make waves. In this universe, absurdity is the rule, and common sense is a luxury item, always out of stock. They believe the world needs filters, instruction manuals, and constant updating, because deep down, they've never accepted the idea that there are things money simply can't buy: awareness, humility, and the ability to laugh at oneself. If you could change one rule on this planet, what would it be? Or would you let the rich live on theirs, the one where logic is optional and Wi-Fi is the only connection to reality?